Welcome back to At the Table with the Masters, part of the Table of Redemption podcast series, where we explore the moments, practices, and wisdoms that help leaders rise, recover, and reimagine what's possible. I'm your host, Rasheen Jamison Richardson, and it is a profound honor to welcome someone whose work has shaped not only my thinking, but the thinking of educators, artists, and leaders around the world, Dr. Steve Seidel. And you are tuning in to an excerpt from his episode, When Arts Are a Source of Resilience and Human Flourishing. This is a leadership redemption moment with Steve. So our signature question, Steve, is, so what brings you to the table of redemption?
Well, I think I'm at the table today, Rasheen, because of your kind invitation. So I thank you for that. When you wrote to me and I started to think about redemption, which is not, and the idea of the table of redemption as a gathering place and a meeting place and a sharing place, I had to acknowledge that redemption is not a word that I use a lot in my own work, and it was interesting to me. I mean, I had to really think about not just the meaning of redemption, but the many meanings of redemption, because I think it has. I mean, you take your cans to the redemption center to recycle them and get 5 cents back. But it has meaning in many contexts. So it got me thinking. I think the one thing that I'll say about that is that, well, two things. One is that as I proceeded through my years of teaching, the question of the classroom as a space of healing became more and more central to me. I think it was always, in a sense, a question. I think that from the very beginning of my teaching, the classroom, I recognized that the classroom needed to be a space of healing, and I can say more about what that meant at that time. That was 50 plus years ago. But I didn't articulate the question at that time. It's only been in more recent years that I've really articulated that question and articulated it in relation to arts learning. So that's one reason I'm already, even as we begin this conversation, grateful to you for bringing me back to that question. And the one other thing that I would say is that I will probably come back time and again in this conversation to learning. Learning is really, I think, my central lens. It's the way that I see so much about the things that you've talked about and shared with me about human growth, human flourishing, meaning making, and so on. To me, that's all in the context of how and what we're trying to learn.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that this work can bring you back to your own work, even all these years later, because that's what brought me to this table and to label it a table, because I don't remember all the years of teaching thousands of students sitting down to my own table.
Yeah.
I was behind the conducting, the wand, the piano, all the trips, everything, until I could not remember. I know what the testimonials were. The work that I did was what is well respected. It got me into Harvard, that same work. But when disaster struck my life, my work, and I was forced to sit down to a table and ask myself, so what was that again? How did you do that again? How are you bold? Where were you resilient? How did you move forward when many have not? And so when I began to label it redemption, it came from 20 years of being in leadership where the arts were cut, my job was cut, working in rural, impoverished, underserved communities or wealthy parts of communities that were still perceived as wealthy, but the arts was always still slim pickings when it came to the resources that were there. So when you mention that this work so far is helping bring you back to your work, I actually feel like a dream has come true for me because it's something I probably took for granted about how I'm coming to this dialogue every time, but that's it. I did not know my own impact. I mean, I know it to a degree of the students, the teachers, the community, but me as that teacher, me as that teacher leader, me as that systems level leader, I didn't get that good, that 360 degree view of what this means. And the only word I could come up with is redemption.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're working, one of the things that retirement has allowed me to understand is how brutal full-time work is.
Oh,
It, I had a professional career, especially my years at the ed school at Harvard, in which I was doing research and I think revealing the powerful role of reflection in learning for children and for adults. And yet there was precious little time for reflection in my own professional life.
yes.
I joke now that, but it's not a joke, that I've done more reading, careful reading, and thoughtful writing in the last, well, it's now 4 years since I retired from my full-time role at the School of Education, uh, than I did probably in 25 years there,
Wow.
just because that work, reading, writing, thinking, reflection, um, takes time and
Mm,
takes a kind of space that a full-time job, which I'm just going to say, anyone working a full-time job, you're not working a full-time job. You're working way more than a full-time job.
mm,
That is, the demands are ever increasing, and it's still all supposed to come out of the same whatever number of 40 hours a week that that they say it's going to be, but it isn't. It's huge and demanding and exhausting, and so we're, in a sense, I think we're always trying to be in recovery from that and trying to learn from what's been going on, but the time for that learning is barely there. We
yeah.
have to really carve it out. And later we might talk about rounds and what that practice has been like, and why I think, we've got a community of people, some of whom have been coming for 30 years to to join that conversation.
Yeah. Well, this is why when I did my research and decided to take the Leadership Redemption Resilience Framework into my time at Harvard, it came from 20 years of having to do that one thing on the spot where there was no respite.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a music teacher, I can't speak for any other subject area. I like to think that it happened for the other subject areas, but it's one of me, and I'm teaching 300 to 400 students a day, whereas the traditional academic subjects, they have one subject, or there's teaching one subject with 18 kids per period. Well, in the arts, you have 300 kids in one period or 200 kids in one period. So there was times I couldn't even get a bathroom break because
Sure.
who's going to leave the kids unattended? Not me. Or
Right.
there were times when, you needed that planning period and it was still now some kind of falconing meeting or some kind of emergency meeting. So the things that you are looking forward to say, oh, I love this work. This is going to be great. As long as I can get this time, that time, but then there is no time. It's all relative to the environment that I was working in. And so in Title I schools, rural impoverished schools, in marginalized communities, well, that is now slim pickings. And then now people are jealous of you if you have 10 minutes more time than they did. It gets down to the wire, right? Because what you're saying resonates so deeply. And with the sports world, it resonates deeply. With the political world, it resonates deeply in so many facets. So I said all that to say this is why when I conducted this research over 20 years, it led me to 4 domains: resilient science, that you must have some source of resilience. And what kind is that? So, leadership preparedness. When we are placed in these environments willingly, some of us, we love it. I'm that kind of person, Steve, that I will complain about having 6 jobs. But if you take one of them away, I will be stunned. It's crazy, but I love it. But then it's too much. But then the thing that I found very critical, though, is if I feel prepared enough, I can do more. So leadership preparedness is a form that we have to help people find redemption in. Then trauma informed recovery. If I'm going to stay on my job 30 years, how much of the environment and how much of leadership is bringing this level of recovery to each of the persons that are working on behalf of this mission? And then the last domain is healing centered flourishing. And many people just call it human flourishing, but healing centered means that at the core of all we're saying and at the core of all we're doing, we're saying, get over that. Let's get to the center of your healing when you're working on these projects. So these are the 4 domains that when I looked into your work as a narrative inquiry, so I do a lot of research in narrative inquiry on the descriptive side, I was able to look into your work and see that you're looking at resilience to me. Some of your work is talking about leadership preparation, especially when you get into the rounds. These dialogues may be indirectly preparing them for a world that neither one of us can control. Then some of the work in Arts Survive is parts of trauma informed recovery because it's about some projects that sometimes be on life support, that if we're not having partnerships, then if we're not insulating ourselves, then which way are we going with this? So this is why I was so deeply drawn to your work and wanted to know from you as well, when it comes to 2 of the domains. There are 4 domains, but human resilience and human flourishing. Can I get your definition, your personal definition of how you see this being a vital part of the work that you have done?
Well, again, I think about those words in the context of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do not assume, even when it's in a sense a natural process, I do not assume that learning is ever easy.
Yeah.
Learning things. When I was director of Project Zero, and people would ask me, so what is Project Zero? What do you do? I would say, well, we try to study how people learn things that are hard to learn, which means a lot. There's a lot in that. There's a lot of things are hard to learn. The arts have always been part of Project Zero's work and I think that they are a really wonderful example of a realm of activity that's very challenging to learn. Anybody tries to learn a musical instrument, anyone tries to master a dance form, anyone tries to make a good piece of theater, uh, getting the paints to do what you want them to do on the canvas, this is not easy, right?
Yeah.
This is very challenging work. So in that context, um, and I'll add also just learning to be an effective arts educator is not easy to learn. In that context, resilience is to me is the capacity to continue on, uh,
Mm.
to bounce back, to um, because things don't work, right?
Yeah.
And the instinct, impulse, inclination to give up is huge. And anybody who has ever tried to play an instrument and doesn't, right, knows that moment where it just feels too hard.
It does.
Um, I mean to pick it up, but it's too hard. Um, so resilience is sensing that intense difficulty, the discouragement, the even the sense of defeat, and finding a way to stick with it and keep going. So that's part of how I think about resilience in the context of learning, in particular, arts learning and arts teaching. Um, Flourishing is it's sort of maybe it's the other side of the same coin that is
Mm.
flourishing. I think is in the context of learning is when it just feels like it's happening really naturally, and it's the growth and development is it's coming. It's you feel that sense that you also feel with practice and rehearsal and sticking with getting the right language for the poem that you're writing. There are times when you turn around and you say, "Well, I was just finding it. It just started to come. It wasn't so difficult or so discouraging." And I think both of you don't have resilience, you don't get to flourishing.
Ooh.
And flourishing gives you the strength and the courage and the determination to keep going when you hit the next, because you will hit the next rough spot. And I don't want to play down the roughness of the rough spots.
Yes.
As in the arts, at least, many people, because I talk to, in my work, this must be true for you. You've probably had 1,000 conversations with when people find out that you're a musician and a music teacher. 1,000 conversations with people who tell you the story of how they didn't become a musician,
Yes.
and and
Exactly.
and the rough spots don't have to be huge. They can be relatively small. A comment from a teacher that makes you just want to give up
Yeah.
because you've that you what you interpret that teacher saying is you don't have the stuff, you can't do it. Rough spots can be. I mean, there are lots of ways that can happen. I think a lot, and I'm sure you do too, about the incredible power that teachers have
Yeah.
for good and for ill, for doing good and for doing harm. And all of us have done harm with comments that we didn't even know were being interpreted in uh, in the way that we may not even have intended them, and taken to heart. So uh, there's a delicacy in every learning process. And one of the things that emerged, um, in the Qualities of Quality project was the idea of the decisions that learners are making, that learners are, in a sense, always, every day, and sometimes many times a day, like even in a single class period, making a decision of whether to continue on or to stop,
Yeah.
to engage or to disengage. And a quality arts learning environment, there are lots of things that um, have to be considered in creating a quality arts learning environment, but it's one in which people, I would say, and I think we heard this over and over in the research, a quality arts learning environment is one in which as many people as possible, it's one in which everyone is saying, yes, I'm choosing to engage, as hard as it might get, as discouraged as I might get. I'm going to engage. I'm going to keep trying. So we're constantly trying to figure out, how do we support that decision, that are you in? Are you out? Yes,
Mm.
I'm in.
Hmm. I am sitting in a pause because it feels like when you're describing this, and my audience may feel the same, you see us. Your research says, I see you. Because when you took a moment to say, and I don't want to downplay the rough spots, I cannot even stress how much relief that gives to me and many of the audience that feels like we have to just keep moving, keep it going, just get over it. Just, well, that's how it goes around here. Some of the culture in the environments that we're teaching in and learning in, not just for us as teachers, but also the administrators from their leaders. And it becomes a trickle down effect. And so I appreciate it so much when you took a moment to um, give give us a great look at human flourishing and resilience together, not one versus the other. But when you talked about it's the other side of the coin, that is profound to me. I have never sat and put those, as researching this, I hadn't put them together, but it makes much for a greater palette. When people are trying this out, they're trying to come back, they're trying to reset, they're trying to evolve, they're trying to um, give it another shot,
Yeah,
and they don't see how it's possible. They literally cannot see how it's possible. So, what you just did for me, and I'm hoping this is for the listening audience, is give us a redemptive moment, a different way of seeing and listening, and a different way of feeling.
good.
So I want to ask you, so what are you leaving this table of redemption with today?
Well, I mean, with a lot of gratitude, Rasheen. I mean, I appreciate, we didn't talk a whole lot about reflection,
Yeah.
but um,
But we can if you want to. It's our
yeah,
show.
I think it's a big topic, the role of reflection in learning. But you've created a space in which, at this table, in which you asked me to revisit things that I worked on some time ago, mostly, at least in their active phase, and revisit them and reconsider them in the light of your particular questions. And that's really a gift because, I mean, part of the purpose of documentation and reflection and learning is to remember. These are, is to have aids to memory. And sometimes you use artifacts, and sometimes you just use dialogue with people who, may not have a curiosity about things that you have been involved in, um, and bring that fresh curiosity. to their questions, and that's a gift. So I'm very grateful, and I take the gratitude away, and also some thoughts, that I will. I'm going up to meet some friends, an artist who is um, doing a kind of workshop performance of a brand new piece, and she's invited five of us to come see it. And as I'm walking over there and sitting in that space, I know that this conversation will resonate in my mind and in my heart.
Awesome. Awesome. I am glad to achieve that because the work of the redemptive leader is to now make a habit out of that being a lifestyle. So, everyone, as we close today, this episode at the Table with the Masters, which is a part of the Table of Redemption podcast series, as you know, our conversation with Steve has illuminated the heart of our theme, the arts as sources of resilience, reflection, and recovery. What Steve shared with us today reminds us that even in seasons of disruption and uncertainty and profound change, the arts offers us a way forward. I hope that you got that. I hope that you really could sit with your own work, your own life, your own obstacles, and find that the arts is a source of helping you move forward. So thank you so much for joining in today at the Table of Redemption. And I hope that you have been well fed. I hope that you are leaving this table feeling rejuvenated. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.